Hello everyone. In this lesson, we'll be looking at germination and we'll be looking at plant propagation. So the content that we will look at in this lesson would be types of germination, the conditions that are needed for germination to occur, viability, sacrification, and method used to grow seedlings. So we will begin by looking at the types of germination. There are two types of germination that you need to be aware of, and they are called Epigel germination and Hypogeal germination. To describe Epigel germination, you should know that Epigel germination is when the cotyledons will rise above the ground. So if you look at the image on the right at the top, you would see that the cotyledon rise above the ground. That is in the third structure that you would see in the diagram. The hypocotyl elongates and forms an arch. So you can see that in the middle of the image, the second image or the second drawing that you see of the plant germinating at the top, you would see a little arch, and that arch is referred to as a hypocotyl. You would not see this in hypogeal germination. So examples of plants that germinate using this method would be kidney beans, tomato, and cabbage. The other type of germination we have is the hypogeal germination. So while the plant is germinating, you would notice that the cotyledons remain below the ground. And you can look at the bottom image here, and you would see that the cotyledon, they remain below the ground. The epicotyl is elongated, and you can see that also in the diagram. And examples of plants that undergo hypogeal germination would be coconut, pigeon peas, and maize. Next, we're looking at the conditions that are necessary for germination to occur. The conditions that are necessary for germination to occur are three: water, and the water is used to activate the enzymes to break down the starch. Now, in order for growth to occur, in order for germination to occur, energy is needed, and the plant must get energy from a food source. That food is stored as starch in the seeds. So the starch must break down into something simpler that is used for respiration. So the starch will break down into glucose. So the water is essential for this process to begin. The water will cause the enzymes to start its reaction and break down the stored starch into glucose, which can be used for aerobic respiration. And the aerobic respiration will produce energy, and that energy will be used for the plant to grow and develop further. Oxygen is also very important, and the oxygen is needed for aerobic respiration to occur. A suitable temperature is required, and the reason for this is because enzymes function within a narrow range. For example, the enzymes within the human body, they would function around 37 degrees Celsius, not much higher than that and not much lower than that. So suitable temperature is needed for these plants so that the enzymes can function properly and can break down the substrate, which will be starch, easily. Another condition that is often required by some seeds would be light, for example, lettuce. But most of the seeds will germinate without light. On the diagram on this slide, you can see a simple experiment that you can set up. And this experiment is used to determine the conditions that are needed for germination. So in A, you put all of the conditions there. You put water, you put oxygen, and you allow the suitable temperature to be there. In B, dry cotton wool is placed inside of the test tube, and the dry cotton wool means that you're removing water. So you will allow oxygen to be in this test tube. You will allow the suitable temperature to be here, but there's no water, there's no moisture. And C, you remove the oxygen. And the way in which you remove the oxygen is by boiling the water. When you boil the water, whatever gas is inside of the water will be removed. So there's no oxygen now in the water. And then you add the water into the test tube. And the layer of oil that you see at the top, we're talking about test tube C here. The layer of oil that you see at the top, the oil will prevent oxygen from entering into the test tube and entering into the water. So these three conditions are placed in room temperature, which is around 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, and you should expect that one of them will germinate. Which one do you think will germinate? Well, it's A, where all conditions are present. What about C? Do you think the seed will germinate in C? No, C does not have the oxygen that's required for germination to occur. And what about D? D is the test tube is placed in a fridge, therefore the temperature will be lower, and that will not allow germination to occur.